would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker, licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Welcome to Thursday, folks. You have one more day to get your name into the drawing for Friday's drawing for the Amazon $50 gift card, or to say it more correctly, the $50 Amazon gift card. This is the X amount of times we've done this at the beginning of each month. A grand total of somewhere between $500 and $600 has been given out so far. I'd love for you to be the very next person to receive it. As long as you get your entry in, you will be able to get considered. As long as you get it in there before 5 p.m. Pacific time this Friday, you'll be in the drawing for it for this month. Of course, we'll also do another draw next month, and we're not starting over every month. If you put your name in today, you'll continue to be eligible for all the drawings moving forward, so don't panic about that. So how do you do it? How do you participate? Well, you jump on over to therebelbroker.com. You go to the top of the page, click the big red button that says Take the Survey to support the show. You're taking a quick demographic survey, which helps me grow the show. I appreciate you doing that. It's going to ask you for your email address 2 times. Use the same email address both times. Make sure it's an email address that you use, because that's how you're going to find out you won. And if you respond within 48 hours, it will also be how I send you your gift card once we've established there's a real human being breathing at the other end of that email address. Then there's a handful of demographic questions to answer, and you're done. And in the process, you've helped me. I truly appreciate it. And you've also given yourself a chance to win that $50 gift card. Okay. I hope you guys got a lot out of yesterday's show. I'm continuing to be enthusiastic about the stuff I was talking about yesterday. I'm kind of expecting it to wane, right? The brain octane stuff I was talking about yesterday. And with how much I'm gushing about it, you would assume I make money off of it. Again, I don't, but I did it again. I've been doing it every day because there was also some part of me that suspected maybe something I wasn't aware of was sort of increasing the energy levels. No, it's very clearly that's the primary factor here. And if anyone else starts using this stuff, I would love to hear your results, to hear how it's working for you. So feel free to reach out to me through therebelbroker.com. If you're having an experience you'd like to share with me, you can just click on contacts in the menu bar and send along any ideas, suggestions, observations, or questions, or observations about the brain octane stuff I talked about yesterday. Before we jump into the show, I want to do a shout out to a listener who has been kind enough to do some back and forth with me via email. I got his permission to do a shout out for his wife, but I didn't get permission to do much of a shout out for him. He's a retired Air Force colonel, fighter pilot with 30 years of experience. He's kind of making. I'm not sure he's ready for this level of combat, frankly. But he's getting his real estate courses done with the intention of at some point working for his broker wife and her father. So a big shout out to Sunny in Connecticut. Thank you very much. I have enjoyed our exchange via email. And something that he has, and I'm not just throwing some bones his way. He did ask for me to give a shout out to his wife's business, Maz Real Estate in Tolland, Connecticut. So consider that a shout out right there. MAZZ Real Estate in Tolland, Connecticut. It sounds like they've got a multi-generational real estate empire sort of growing there in Connecticut. So good luck to you. But he shared with me kind of an interesting thing that I think you should be aware of. Now, for those of you who have a very long memory, and I know there's one or two of you, I actually had a listener reach out to me the other day who was waxing philosophical about things that happened when I used to do the show live on Blog Talk Radio. And I thought, holy Mary, that person's been listening for at least 5 years. So I'm glad I've got some of you who've been around forever. That's kind of reassuring. But at any event, I wanted to share this with you because if you are a longtime listener, you might just remember a discussion we had about some Chinese drywall. And there were these huge issues with it, and it was causing all kinds of health problems, and it was a bad situation. It kind of went away. It was one of those things I had on my short list of things to track for an awful long time, but the story kind of just faded away. The problem remained. For anyone who had been buying this drywall, it was presenting huge problems. Connecticut has another interesting problem that is totally homegrown. So no Chinese drywall involved in this one. But this one's kind of creepy. And I'll read you his email. There is a scandal in Connecticut related to crumbling residential basements. It includes homeowners, quarries, builders, realtors, insurance companies, state legislatures, and has interest from FEMA and the federal government. The size of the problem is not yet completely understood or appreciated. Estimates suggest 19,000 plus homes are affected, but it could negatively impact all structures, bridges, foundations, basements, etc., that used a particular quarry's concrete from the early 80s and beyond. So just to kind of put this into perspective, this is a quarry, and apparently an element within what was quarried out of it that was turned into concrete is something called pyrrhotite. That's the stuff that's evil, apparently. But, my estimate is 19,000 homes is probably a very low estimate. If this has been happening since the 1980s, I'm not sure when this would have ended. But for those of you who might be interested in this, and I would suggest that for those of you who are hearing me say this and thinking, Connecticut, don't need to worry about it. Don't assume that. I would assume that this potentially crosses state lines in terms of these guys supplying this material to folks that would have used it outside of the state. So don't assume you're not potentially at risk. And I thought I'd also take a minute to put it into perspective because there's an interesting article from the New York Times relating to this issue. So it's serious. This is the timeline here, or at least the publication is the New York Times, but the byline is Stafford Springs, Connecticut. And according to this, a woman named Sandra Miller was at work in January when her daughter called from their home on Oak Ridge Drive with alarming news. The house was making loud noises as if someone had jumped off the counter and landed with a bang. For seconds afterwards, the home shook. A while later, it happened again and again. Over the next several hours, terrifying bangs rattled the house. The next morning, Ms. Miller called Bill Neal, a structural engineer, who delivered the same stunning assessment to her that he has now told hundreds of homeowners. The concrete foundation was crumbling, and as a result, her house was gradually collapsing. Across nearly 20 towns in northeastern Connecticut, a slow-motion disaster is unfolding as local officials and homeowners wrestle with an extraordinary phenomenon. Hundreds, possibly thousands of home foundations that have been poured since the 1980s are cracking with fissures so large you can slip a hand inside. So imagine, and nothing is worse than having your foundation crumble from underneath you. Your house follows real quickly when that happens. Officials are continuing their investigation. The cascade of crumbling foundation poses a thicket of legal, emotional, and financial issues. There's an official web page. I'm going to link to all of this stuff for you if this is something you want to check out. And they're only mentioning Connecticut here, but if you are someone outside of Connecticut, I have a hard time buying this idea that it would be very limited to very local users. Maybe that's the case, but I'll tell you what, it's not the assumption I would make. Last month, when was this? When was this written? June 7th, 2000, so a year ago. So a year ago, let's see. Connecticut General Assembly passed a bill that would, among other things, allow homeowners with failing foundations to request a reassessment of their property values and require contractors to record the supplier of concrete for residential foundations. Oh, that's where the crux of the problem is. It's hard to track who the suppliers were. Oh, my God. So I hadn't realized that part. I read through this article before and skipped that paragraph, apparently. But imagine that. Imagine being in a situation where if you can't prove via paperwork where the cement came from, That's horrible. Another measure that sought to ease victims' financial loss was less successful. Senator Tony Guglielmo, a Republican, had proposed a $50 million bond to help homeowners, but Democrats in the state house rejected it, arguing such a measure should wait until the full extent of the problem was better understood. And this goes on. So feel free to check this out. If you are in, this is Northern Connecticut. It sounds to me like anybody in Connecticut should be thinking about this, and anybody bordering Connecticut might want to consider whether or not if you're having a problem with your foundation, you might want to consider this as a possible reason, particularly if the thing's fallen apart. So just keep that in mind. Again, links will be in the description for today's show. This is exactly the kind of thing that just makes me nuts. Because as an investor, where do you go with this? I mean, what's the solution? Now, I've had homes before where there were severe foundation problems to the point where someone needed to replace the foundation in order to make the house viable. And typically what they do is they jack it up on jacks, build a new foundation under it, and drop it. And that sounds amazingly expensive. But I know that for instance, this is ancient history, I realize. But back in the good old days of 1988, when we had that gigantic earthquake, anybody remember that? Well, if you're in California, you might remember it. But it's the one that happened on the day of the World Series, also on my birthday at 5:07 p.m. or 5:03 p.m., right around there. And I was about to take a midterm in college, and celebrated when the earthquake ended, and the instructor said that we will be delaying the midterm or the final or whatever it was, because of emotional stress. So we were able to go off. The power had gone off for a moment, and it came back on a moment later. So we all went to the pub to get adult beveraged, and discovered quickly from the TV that the baseball game was canceled, that Candlestick Park was cracked in all different places, that parts of the freeway had collapsed and accordioned down on itself. So we went to the roof of the building we were in and surveyed all of San Jose, all of Silicon Valley, and it was black. The only places that had power was San Jose State University, which is where I was, the hospital off to the northeast, and the police department off to the southwest. So that was fun. But long-winded version of too late. I can't shorten it now. The short version now, we'll get to the part that matters. Tons of homes shifted off of their foundations in this. So in Los Gatos, which is at that time and continues to be today a hugely desirable area for a whole lot of reasons. There's tons of reasons to love Los Gatos. I'm a huge fan of Los Gatos. It's a little pricey for my taste, but it's got a great vibe. So if you ever want to come to the Bay Area and check out a really cool downtown, go to Los Gatos. But anyway, and they have a great bar, the Black Watch. I wonder if it's still there. Anyway, so there were tons of houses that had sort of slipped off their foundations. Everyone was freaked out. I was in real estate at the time. I actually was in graduate school. I had graduated the year before, and the class I was taking was a graduate school of education course, and had gotten my real estate license the year before. And 4 or 5 people in my office were now going around and buying homes that on the day before, on October 16th, were selling for $500,000, $600,000 at the time, and then the next day we're selling for $200,000 because the owners were like, "I'm out, I'm done. The house is off its foundation. I'll sell it as is." And they ended up, as a group, buying 3 or 4 properties like that, and it ended up costing, on average, about $10,000 to get those homes put back on their foundation, and that's exactly what people did. A company came out, lifted the home up in the air, and if the foundation was okay, fine. If not, if it needed repairs, it got repaired. But then they just shifted the home over, put it back down on its foundation, and just bolted it. There were just homes that hadn't been properly bolted or weren't bolted at all. So what's my point? My point is, if you're someone who is seeing the very beginnings of this and you're trying to figure out what your legal repercussions are, at least understand there is a remediation that you can do that stinks. It's horrible. But if you can get knowledge that you're going to suffer from this, you can do the jack the home up and then have a new foundation put in. Now, granted, it's not going to cost you as little as what it costs these folks to simply modify an existing foundation or put a home back on an already good existing foundation. You're going to need to pull that entire foundation out, which is a whole other level of annoying, and I get that. But just to sort of offer a suggestion, if you're an investor, and this is where we start leaning into areas that are maybe a little bit more potentially annoying, that you might feel chip away at your soul a little bit. If you find someone with a home under these circumstances, and you're someone who's got a little bit of savvy in terms of construction and understands what the cost would be to do these things, these could turn into an opportunity for you to help someone get out from under the problem, and then potentially have yourself a property that comes with headaches that you can solve and turn that into a income producing property for yourself. I've been in that position where you're going to folks who are in a hardship place, and even if you are absolutely 100% about making it offering a solution for someone so they can get out from under a potential problem. If, for instance, they don't have the resources to deal with the problem and you do, that's great. But what I don't want is to encourage people to go out there and become little vultures and really hit someone when they're down on something like this. It's an opportunity for you to solve their problem and give yourself an opportunity to overcome a problem. Problems equal opportunities. And if you happen to be someone with the knowledge to solve that problem, go for it. Okay. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we will chat more about the wide, wonderful world of real estate. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right. Aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I was happy to be able to give y'all a little bit of an inside scoop on what's going on in Connecticut. That really stinks. Hopefully it'll be something folks can work through, but so often the best solution is going to come from folks stepping up to fill the need of remediating this stuff. So look at it as an opportunity for you and for the unfortunate people who are in the position where they may own a home that has this problem, since they can at least walk away with some value in their pocket. And then you can face the problems related to fixing the problem and then making it more marketable, right? Okay, so one interesting little piece of data that came across my desk is really kind of contradictory. It doesn't change any of the data we've already talked about, but it is bizarre as all get out. Now, it absolutely fits with what we're talking about. So this headline, I believe, is alluding to a correct thing, but I don't get how their data is contradicting so much other data that's out there. So we're gonna take a look at it here. This is coming to us from Housing Wire, and the headline is: Americans believe home price correction imminent. Okay, they sure aren't acting like it. You know what's also interesting is I have a gentleman on YouTube who consumes the show who has been talking about how in Palm Springs, new home construction is just no one's building because no one's buying, and there are homes that have been on the market for months and months and months. Now, I can't verify any of that because I don't. For whatever reason, I do have a system that I'm supposed to be able to access that connects to the whole state, but for whatever reason, it's not showing me anything in Palm Springs. Because I tried to get up there and see what the real story was. Because you know what, to be honest, I don't know much about Palm Springs. I know that a lot of people retire there. I know it's hot, and I know I don't like hot, so I don't pay much attention to Palm Springs. But I thought that was interesting because Palm Springs is usually mentioned in the same breath as vacation homes for rich folks and retirees who are going to be living fairly well, right? So I found that to be interesting. And I wonder if that doesn't feed some of this. Obviously, I'm in a weird little cocoon bubbly thing here in Silicon Valley where everything's going nuts because I'm not seeing anything indicating a slowdown in terms of increase in prices and low inventory. And that, I'm not seeing inventory relief coming in terms of single family residential homes. None of that seems to be happening. However, this data comes to us from a company called Value Insured. Now, they're a provider of down payment protection for home buyers, and they had their modern home buyer survey. And in this survey, Americans increasingly believe the housing market is overheating and home prices continue to rise, and said they suspect a housing price correction may be imminent. And great. But no one's acting like they believe that, at least not in my marketplace. Maybe all the people they surveyed were in Palm Springs. I don't know. But I'm not seeing in my markets or the markets we cover in a larger sense, right? The metro areas, when we've talked about San Diego, Los Angeles, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, San Jose, Denver, Miami, New York, Minneapolis, Boston, Philadelphia, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, all these places we talk about, that isn't happening. No one is acting like they think prices are about to drop. Now, granted, one element of that may be that we aren't seeing the same rate of increase on a month-to-month basis in terms of how much prices are increasing, but it's still increasing. I am still seeing home prices increasing every month. Now, housing confidence continues to be in a positive trajectory. This is all the same article, so there's a lot of contradictions here that I don't quite get. Due to high home prices and low inventory, the companies. So why housing confidence? If you're trying to think your way through this, if they're talking about it from an aspect of people considering prices being overheated or the market being overheated and prices on the verge of about to go down, why does confidence continue to be on a positive trajectory? And why would it be in a positive trajectory due to high home prices and low inventory? Are they talking about a different segment of the buying public? I do not know. The company's housing confidence index score increased 1 percentage point from the first quarter to 68.7. So it sounds like in spite of the fact that they have probably asked a question that says something like, do you think the market is overheated? And they're saying yes. When they're muxing all the answers together and coming up with an overall confidence number, it's still higher than it used to be. Nearly 8 in 10 Americans, 79%, say home ownership is an important part of the American dream. Despite this commitment to home ownership, they are less confident in buying a home now and don't believe it will hold its current value. The survey showed 57% of Americans said home prices are overvalued and unsustainable in the second quarter of this year. This is an increase of 7 percentage points from the first quarter. The fear was even higher in urban areas where 65% of Americans said homes are overvalued and unsustainable. Prospective home buyers are also more wary, as 63% of all home buyers and 72% of all millennial home buyers said they are concerned with the timing of the market and want to make sure they are not buying high. So, yay, I think it's smart for people to be thinking these thoughts, and it really just brings home to me, I need to sell my home now, in case that attitude starts to permeate my market. And it may be, maybe it's percolating and it's just having an effect that you can't detect yet. See, that's the thing. When you start to see the beginning of something like this in a market like mine, where it's already so oversaturated with buyers in relation to the number of listings that are out there, the number of homes in inventory, it makes it harder to detect, right? Agents will just continue to say, I got multiple offers. And if you're plugged in enough, maybe you're realizing, well, hey, you know what? 2 months ago, I had 10 offers. Now I'm only getting 6. Next month, maybe I'll only get 2, right? So it's that kind of a thing. However, then there's the other side of the coin that says, well, you know what? For this time of year, that's kind of normal. People tend to stop shopping once school starts, and school usually starts at the end of August, beginning of September. So there's also that to take into account. While experts explained living in a home more than 7 years could lower the home buyer's exposure to market fluctuations, only 37% of millennials plan to live in their next home more than 6 years. Now, what's interesting about that number, and one reason why I wanted to at least get down to that for today's show, is because that is not what data told us last year. Data last year told us that millennials wanted to skip the median step in purchasing a home. What's the median step? So the median step is a married couple without children who are millennials, who plan to have a family at some point, but do not have one now. Those folks tend to be the folks who buy the 1 or 2 bedroom home, whether it's a condo, a townhouse, or a single family residential, with the intent of, when the time comes, buying that bigger home. All the data last year, and from lots of different sources, was telling us that's not your millennial. Your millennial is going to skip that step. And some of them were living with mom and dad. Some of them were living with some other family member to save money to simply buy the 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath home that they're going to want when they have children. So they're buying that home that they will grow into. That was the data. And that continues to be the experience I have with millennials right now. I see far more of them want to buy the house that's got the 3 bedrooms so they can accommodate the kiddo when it comes along. Many of them are having to settle for less, and some of them are deciding not to buy anything at all. But this data seems to contradict what we were hearing about millennials last year. The article goes on to say, beyond the jitters, I see in our survey an increasingly informed nation of homebuyers who understand the risk of the market. To those concerned about a price correction or waiting to time the market, I recommend a proactive approach. Have an exit plan, then anytime you find a home you love is a good time to buy. Not necessarily bad advice, but you know what? And this is one of those self-defeating things that I say to my buyer clients that everyone has told me stop saying because you're not helping yourself. There will always be another house, right? Now, if it took you a year and a half to find the house that you like, then that means it might take you another year and a half to find the next one. But the reality is there always will be another house. Will prices go up? Yeah. And if you find a house you like, should you try to come up with a way to buy it that you can live with? Yeah. But I don't want folks creating a bigger problem for themselves by overbuying or spending more than they should. There's something to be said for having a little bit of discipline in terms of your buying habits. I want you to be able to buy a house that you can keep. Remember, you're not buying a house, you're buying debt, right? So if you have any ideas that things are going to change, that it will affect your ability to manage that debt, you need to mitigate that. Maybe it means you need to spend, maybe it means you need to go for that smaller house, or just find something that's in a different price bracket, or maybe increase your commute by 15 minutes and reap the benefits of spending a little bit less for being a little bit out of the city center. That's a defensive measure buyers can take today to try to insulate themselves from a potential downturn. And at the same time, give themselves options. So you do it, you go ahead and you do that decision-making process, and you do go ahead and buy a little bit below where you absolutely wanted to be, but you've got better cash flow. Your debt to loan ratio is better. If something weird happens with the house, maybe you and in your purchasing, you've tried to purchase in a way where you're insulated a little bit more from market downturns. I know that's a real tough one to do. In very general terms, you can find larger communities to do that, but those communities aren't usually too darn close to each other. But you do what you can. You're just approaching it smartly. And if you do that, you can at least get yourself into a position that maybe is a little bit better than otherwise, because it would really stink if you find yourself completely underwater or in a difficult position to the point where you can't manage your debt, and suddenly it's a big enough burden that you need to make more drastic decisions that could have negative effects that follow you for years. So I'd much rather have you do that and have your owner experience be survivable financially, rather than having 2 years of awesome in your house that you overpaid for, only to get smacked over the head with a really bad downturn down the road a little bit. All right. As always, folks, it is my goal to leave more value on the table than you have just graciously invested in time that you've spent listening to the show. I honestly hope we've achieved that today. I think we did. I think we did pretty well, particularly for you folks in or around Connecticut who might have something you want to check out about your foundation. And hopefully the information we've shared in the second half of the show is useful for you. Maybe just bounces around in your brain and maybe get some different neurons firing in a way they weren't firing before. That's always a good place to be. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to y'all next time.